First two questions, I think.
Okay. How are you? How's your life going? I haven't talked to you in a long time.
I know. I'm good. I'm just actually working on some spring curriculum stuff for next spring. So
Oh, nice.
working with that. I appreciate you being able to meet earlier.
Yeah, for sure. I realized it's my cousin's birthday today, so I was like, okay, I can either do it like right after we have dinner and then skip out on something, or like do it before and then go over later. So it's probably an easier thing.
Nice.
Cool. So I guess just like, first of all, can you tell me about your like foray into the esports world? How you got into it.
Yeah. So I got introduced to the esports world a little over 10 years ago, and it was actually at my first job. And I was working at an eyewear company that made eyewear for computer use. And so one of our target demographics was the gaming audience. And that's actually when I started to go and check out some of the competitive esports events at the time, going to my first MLG events, going to some of the other events, getting to meet a lot of the esports pros. Back then it was, a lot of Halo, early days of Call of Duty esports and StarCraft and things like that. So that was definitely my first introduction to it. And then, I got super immersed into it from there.
Cool. So like were video games always a thing that you were, you were interested in growing up, or was it more of a recent phenomenon?
I loved video games as a kid. Played a lot with my little brother. We'd always take turns playing. Since we only had one controller, we'd be playing a lot of one-player games. And then I went to, as I got older, I didn't have as much time to play. And then when I went to college, I started playing video games again. I was playing a lot of Modern Warfare 2 back then. And I always loved video games. It's just, I kind of fell in and out of it because of time and not having enough time to play games. But over time, I've had the opportunity to be able to play more now.
Cool. So in college, I remember we talked about this before, but you were on the pre-med track, right?
I was, yeah. So originally I was studying to become a doctor. It was a human bio major doing pre-med. And then about 2 years in, I realized it's just not going to happen. I was getting my ass kicked by OChem, and it was, I realized I needed to switch majors. So I switched over to becoming an econ major. And then after I graduated, I was, right in the heart of the recession, not a lot of jobs. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And then, I was thinking about going back, maybe just, toughening up and trying to get through and go the pre-med route. But I ended up taking that job that I was saying earlier at an eyewear company. And that's, kind of the way my career kicked off was being there. I was there for about 2 years. And, during my time there, really got to immerse myself in the gaming and esports space. And that, led to another thing and has been kind of the path of my career from there.
So from Gunner, you went to Machinima, right?
Yep.
So how did that,
so after about a couple of years in San Diego at Gunner, I was a little ready for something a little different. And so that's when a buddy of mine over at Machinima had, offered me a job to come and run their gaming network. Machinima at the time was the largest gaming multi-channel network on YouTube. So one of the only places you could monetize video game content on YouTube by being in the network. So I was there, and that's really where I got to sink my teeth into the gaming space, and was really focused on, bringing on new gaming talent, having them, start distributing their content in their network, working with our ad sales team on helping monetize that content, and then working with our programming teams on a variety of content. Was there for, over almost 4 years, and really experienced a lot of the pains of the early days of YouTube, as well as just, watching as gaming grew. And from there, then I actually went over to Major League Gaming to help launch their live platform, as they were looking to break off and do their own thing from Twitch. I was there for about a little over 2 years, and then, we got acquired by Activision, at which point I made the decision to move over to a mobile game streaming company called Mob Crush. I was there for about a year, and then after that, now I'm over here at Twitter.
Cool. So just back to Machinima a little bit, just because Machinima is super sick. So you kind of joined when, like you mentioned, YouTube was in its kind of early stages. I mean, YouTube was pretty established by that point, but it was just starting to become like a place where people really went for content, and like they started watching YouTube channels and YouTube videos instead of, you know, TV. I feel like my generation kind of was part of that, like part of that transition. Like I kind of stopped watching TV, and like I pretty much got all of my entertainment from YouTube after about like the age of like 10 or so. So like how can you tell me a little bit about the YouTube like market strategy at that point? Because I think Niga Higa, Smosh, and Ray William Johnson were like the only three other channels behind or like in front of Machinima at the time.
Yeah, it was a really different time. I think I still kind of liken it to the Wild Wild West. You know, people were really, you know, these networks were popping up here and there with a lot of big promises and not really delivering. And I feel, you know, that you had other competitors starting to break into the space. So it felt very much like the Wild Wild West. It was also at the same time the golden era of Machinima. Really felt like, you know, people looked at Machinima and were like, we're aspiring to be there. So I want to be signed to the Machinima network. It was really a wild time. And I think we saw during my time there, we watched the evolution of that, going from Machinima being this place that people really aspired to, you know, by the time I left, it was a place that people didn't necessarily, it didn't have the same sentiment. The sentiment had changed almost 180. And so that was a really challenging thing to experience because of the way things were done. You know, it was also just because at the time, because there wasn't a lot of the formalities that are there now, you know, the contract rules and regulations, how people were, you know, what is the compensation model looking like? Everything was such in flux, and it was so reliant on YouTube's monetization and how YouTube would monetize and how they would forecast their tools and features. It was a very fragile business system because you're basically building a business on top of another business. So you're reliant on whatever that business does. So let's say at the time when I started, YouTube didn't monetize mobile views. So you wouldn't get any ads on mobile. Now today that's foreign because we get served ads all the time. But back then you only saw ads on desktop. So you were only getting so much money because of that. And at the time, I think like desktop views were like 50% compared to mobile. So there was already you know, half your revenue is you only get half the revenue coming from desktop. That's changed now where probably, you know, maybe it's probably flipped on its side and it's probably like 60-70% of the views are coming from mobile versus desktop, right? Anyways, so you are now reliant on, if another competitor is trying to sign your talent, they can go out and say, hey, we're going to pay on all views. Doesn't matter if it comes from mobile or desktop. It means now, as your business now has to hope, either you can compete with the other guys and hope that mobile monetization comes, or you can just say, hey, this is what we pay. So I think like those types of challenges would come up left and right. And I think also just, you know, people weren't really sure what this best strategy was. Watch time a big thing. How is that coming into play? Where your views were coming from, how that impacted it, because monetization was different for every country. There was so many different intricacies that I think now people have really gotten down to a science and have a better understanding of. But I think, you know, YouTube is always changing. Its algorithm is always changing. So it's something that, you know, even though I think a lot of things are a lot more figured out now, there is still that constant change. It's one of the only thing constant right now is change when it comes to YouTube. But
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, at the time it was just so fascinating because everybody was still trying to figure out, and we were just building as we went, right? And you know, didn't know any better because it was such uncharted territory.
Right. Yeah. So like, because everything was so desktop focused, like it seems like the mobile platform was kind of like, okay, we're not getting too much money from that, so like that's kind of on the back burner in terms of content goes. So like, you know, Machinima, they were all desktop based things. So like 10-minute videos, maybe even longer, like long form content. How did you see that evolve like during your time at Machinima, like the content itself?
It started off shorter, actually. It started off short form, and then it got longer. So that was, I think, the big evolution is we went from minute-long videos to now like 10, 20-minute long videos. It was really, you were starting to reward people for making longer form content. I remember in the beginning, people were like, I don't know how I'm going to make a 10-minute video. Like this is not possible. And you would see the monetization differences. Like a short video would get less monetization than a long video. And so people were kind of struggling at the beginning to figure out what their programming and content strategy looked like because of that.
Okay, cool. And then also like Machinima, like you said, it started because it was some guy wanted to make like what was his name? Hancock or something? Hancock. Yeah, he wanted to make like these videos from video games. It was like a small little community. The story is really cool, but then it grew obviously very quickly, and then it became something that, you know, something much larger than it was initially, you know, created for. And that kind of seems like the path that a lot of content gaming companies have taken, where it's like a couple, like maybe even like a streamer, like it's a small YouTuber just like making videos on the side, or like someone makes, you know, someone plays video games a little bit, gets their friends, starts a podcast, and then, you know, Rooster Teeth comes along, kind of thing, you know. So how did like the culture within Machinima, like how was that as like a company compared to maybe like, I'm sure I don't know enough, but was Gunner a little bit more like traditional, like company, you know?
Yeah, I'd say they were.
Okay.
It was still a startup, and it was still very unorthodox.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I had some really exciting experiences there and did a lot of crazy things there. It was, you know, it introduced me to gaming, right? So I got to go to events like E3 or PAX, and the Comic Cons of the world, plus the MLG. So it was still very, you know, very much cutting edge, if you will, and very, you know, culturally relevant. Like I was doing stuff with musicians, whether it was like 50 Cent or Raekwon or B.O.B. at the time when he was popular, like all these different people. Like I still had a lot of interesting experiences there. But I think what was cool about Machinima was like the culture when I got there was just very much, it felt kind of like college a little bit, where you're just like with a lot of people your same age, and everybody's really into video games and everybody's just having a lot of fun. And so it was like, you know, I met some of my best friends there, right? And I'm still friends with them to this day, where, you know, we were just young single guys just hanging out in LA and just like, you know, playing video games and talking about video games all day. And like, it was the coolest thing ever. And so we were able to, you know, enjoy that experience. And it was really fun because we were also like in the gaming space, so well revered. It was a really awesome time, and truly felt like a golden age when we were at Machinima. So it was really cool when we started, I'll tell you that.
Okay. And then it kind of changed. Was that like not a sustainable, like company atmosphere?
I think the company was getting bigger. You're hiring really quick, hired way too many people.
Okay.
And it was I think we got to a point where we just hiring way too many people, didn't really have enough, like we weren't making enough money because again, building a business on another business is always challenging, especially when said business is built with temporary contracts. So it's tough, right? And I just think there was, you know, considerations around the company getting bought and it didn't get bought, and all of those things coming into play. I think the run rate was just, it was burning too money too fast. So I think all of that then started to put a damper on the culture. It's also, you know, when you're starting to renegotiate people's contracts, you're laying people off, it puts, you know, it darkens the time, and it makes it hard for you to feel like you're at the place that you once started at, where everybody really loved it and there was that passion. I felt like that started to disappear.
So how, you know, then you moved from Machinima to Mob Crush, and then up the gaming line. How have you seen
MLG?
To MLG, and then to Mob Crush? My bad.
No worries.
How did the cultures change between those two now? Because you kind of, you know, your career has evolved pretty much with the gaming scene too, like with esports. So like, have you seen it become more like professional, I guess, like as a word?
I think so. Yeah, it's definitely become more. There's more infrastructure in place. There's more regulation. I think there's definitely more process, and there's just a lot of the things that weren't there before. There's management, there's agencies, there's, you know, franchise models in esports. You know, there's, I think the platforms of a lot of big platforms are in play, and so I think a lot of that's the money is definitely more money coming into this place for sure. So I think all of that is definitely improved and helped the ecosystem mature. It's definitely mature.
Okay. And you know, a lot of your job, it seems like, is partnerships, brand deals, talking to like talking to big names in the esports community. How has that part changed too? Like you're talking to now people with a much bigger following and a much more serious title than it used to be. It might be the same title, like it might be famous YouTuber, but famous YouTuber means something else now than it did before.
Yeah, I'd say it's I think people are really trying to think about longevity now and not just looking for a quick buck, but thinking about how do I make this a sustainable business. You still have some people that are like, hey, I'm in and out, but a lot of the people now are like, how do I make this last? Because I've been doing it for several years now. I need to keep doing this. So I think that's one of the most interesting things is seeing that evolution.
Okay. And so what does that mean for Twitter? Like what does Twitter do in the gaming sphere?
Yeah, so I think, the bottom line is that we really are the conversational layer of the entire industry. No matter what game it is, people are coming to Twitter to talk about it. And I think what we're seeing now is we're partnering with people to be a content distribution platform too. So people are using us to distribute short form videos, live video, and a variety of other things. So for us, it's about how do we continue to strategize around that, bringing that content to the platform, but also how do we allow them to build a business on this platform through monetization. So we're, ad supported platform, and we do video ads for a lot of our partners. So they're able to run pre-roll in front of their live video or their short form video. And so we're working with them to think about how we can sell that video to advertisers, or if we're running programmatic video against it. There's a few different ways to monetize. And so we're working with the right people and looking at the key folks to think about who should be on the platform doing that.
Okay, cool. So do you see Twitter as becoming like, because YouTube was the bastion of gaming for a long time, do you see Twitter as becoming kind of the new YouTube for at least for esports?
I wouldn't say
except for Twitch.
Yeah, I think we're never going to be that YouTube or Twitch of the world, because they're a live. That's a live platform. That's a VOD platform. And for us, it's more about the conversation through and through.
Okay.
And we're a content platform. So content for us is everything from live video, short form video, to tweets, to moments, to GIFs, you name it. So I think, the way we look at it is different, in that I think there's a way that everything coexists. And I'm a firm believer in that too.
Oh, okay, cool. So like, I guess more about your job now. You say you travel a lot, and you were in Japan recently. You're all over the place. Why do you have to go so many places?
It's a lot of it. So my role, I'm the global head of gaming partnerships. So I've got to meet our partners everywhere, right? And so while gaming truly has no borders. That's the other thing too, if you think about it. The fandom is everywhere. So when I was out in Japan, it was about meeting with our partners around Evo Japan, or meeting with folks to better understand, how the esports industry is looking like out there, and what are the opportunities for us to continue to help develop it. Then we're also looking at advertisers and thinking about how we can educate them on gaming and how they should be better activating around the space. So it's those types of conversations are happening all over the world, and they're looking to Twitter as a place to distribute their content and build a business. So folks like myself have to go out and meet with them and understand what's going on. It's also, when I travel to these places, it's also a really good opportunity for me to see what's going on locally and how we can best support that stuff in the future, whether it's local events like Japan, or going to Germany for Gamescom. These opportunities are really unique to see what's happening locally, because while gaming has no borders, there's the cultural aspects to each of these regions. And so it's really important to understand that stuff too.
Do you see like different cultures using Twitter differently? Do you see like different, or even not even different cultures, like different games using Twitter? Like is League Twitter different than Overwatch Twitter, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'd say we see that regionally there's a lot of differences. Like Japan, for example, is fascinating because they actually, people there, they make different Twitter accounts for their different interests. So some people have like 10 Twitter accounts, because one's for photography, one's for gaming, one's for food, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the interesting things I've seen for like the Japanese culture. When it comes to like different games, I think, I've seen like Call of Duty was Call of Duty Twitter is probably one of the first kind of sub gaming communities that took off on the platform. They really gravitated towards Twitter very early on. And so like they've just have the huge, well, very large presence on the platform. They banter a lot. They share a lot of, video is starting to grow more there. I think everyone is a little bit different, but I think also it's interesting to see like the fandom for each of the games and how they use the platform for that. It's interesting, like things like Overwatch, and when Overwatch League took off, you started to see a lot of the animation that people were making for their favorite fans and favorite teams and stuff like that. And that's a little bit different, that you don't necessarily see that for like League of Legends. But meanwhile, then you also have like cosplay that comes into play for like League, Dota, and some of the other games. So it varies based on genre, but I think there's a lot of the same similarities too, whether it's banter and spicy memes and video content. I think that's something that, gaming as a whole is really good at.
Cool. What would you like to see, I guess, more of in terms of or maybe not, how about like, which brands would you like to see come into esports that aren't there and that you think could like be a really good addition to the platform?
I'm ready for more sportswear brands to come in. So Nike, Adidas, I'd love to see them invest more into it. We're starting to see like auto companies coming in, whether it's Honda or Mercedes or Audi, and I think that's great. It'd be really cool to see the sportswear brands come in, do some fun stuff there.
Cool. What kinds of brands are traditionally a part of esports branding?
So the endemics are definitely the Intels, the HyperXs of the world, Monster Energy, Red Bull. They've all become quite endemic. Razer, anything peripheral related or anything on that like energy side has done. It's been around for a while. And then let's see, yeah.
Okay, cool. And like, where do you see like yourself in the esports world in the future when it becomes more? You said the only constant is change, but I don't know if that's a consistent constant forever. Like at some point, maybe it will become standardized and become like a sports. But the thing is, new games keep coming out, so maybe not. But like, do you see yourself in the same kind of position as you are now, or would you want to maybe gravitate towards another section of the esports world?
That's a good question. I love what I do. I think, it's working at Twitter is certainly a dream job. And, if I can continue to push the gaming and esports industry forward and help push it towards mainstream awareness in what I'm doing, that's what I want to do. So I firmly believe Twitter is the place to do that, because it's the conversational layer of the internet. It's where we're constantly, bringing things to the forefront and helping things mature. And I think, I want to be able to continue to do that here.
Cool. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you for like sharing so much about